coordinated by the Wheatcrib Empowerment Initiative. And it's an NGO focused on human capital development. Just recently, the NGO launched a campaign, a national values campaign that is called the V.I.P. campaign. And it's a campaign that is focused on promoting moral values in society. It was the 14th president of the United States of America, President Roosevelt, that said that to educate a person in mind and not in morals is to educate a menace in society. At the V.I.P. campaign, we believe that the bedrock for building great nations lie in the building of moral values as a foundation of those nations. Any serious nation that is serious about transforming its society must pay close attention to the moral values of its or her people. Educators say that there are 3 H's for wholesome education. They say the head, which is the cognitive skills and thinking capacities. They say the hand, which has to do with practical skills, creativity, and problem-solving skills. And then the heart, which has to do with values, morals, emotions, and character. Much of what we do in our society today is the head and the hand. And we have failed to focus more attention on the heart through a robust moral values education curriculum. In fact, moral values education was once removed from our curriculum in schools. This brings me to the reason why we are here tonight. There is a major problem that we are facing, and it's a problem of moral values erosion. A few weeks ago, I heard the song Shedi Bala Bala for the first time, and I was shocked at what I was hearing. A few weeks later, I saw children singing and dancing to the lyrics of that same song. In fact, a few days ago, as I walked around my estate, I met an 8-year-old boy playing football with his peers, and he was singing that song so happily, and he was touching all his body. I drew him close and I asked if he did understand what the lyrics of that music was saying, and he said he did understand it. For a boy of 8-year-old to be singing that, I knew that there was a problem somewhere. This song has become a viral challenge on social media, and both the educated, the celebrities, men and women, children and the likes have begun to make a challenge of it, dancing very provocative dances. Our purpose for coming here tonight is to ask the question as to why vulgarity, sex, and violence thrives in our entertainment and why it is getting worse by the day. This session will attempt to unearth why we face a downward slide in our entertainment culture and values as a people, the danger that it portends to us, and how we can begin to do something about it. I trust that Dr. Ayodeji, Funke, and all of us who are in attendance tonight will be able to provide some workable answers to this. Do kindly enjoy the session, and thank you. Over to you, Funke.
Thank you so much, Mr. Giwa, for that powerful introduction. I hope that with that introduction, our hearts are so open to receive that, what we're going to be hearing tonight. And also, once you have questions, please do not hesitate to use the chat room to drop your questions as they come. We'll look at the chat room later. And once Dr. Oyadeyi finishes, you can use the virtual, you can raise your hand virtually, and then we will unmute you so that you can ask questions, so that everything can be orderly. So as we go along, let me introduce who Dr. Oyadeyi is. I've known him for quite a while. I call him Egbon. So let me read his profile for us. Just a moment. So Dr. Oyadeyi, so this profile can be intimidating, but I will cut it short in as possible. So Dr. Oyadeyi obtained his first degree in physiology from the University of Lagos in 1999. Please, can you tell me where you were in 1999? And his master's degree in physiology from the University of in 2002. He joined Layoke Akintola University of Technology in 2002. That was where we met him, and as a teaching assistant. Under the Research Training Fellowship for the Developing Country Scientists by the Center for South-South Cooperation in Science, he went to India in 2007. And then he was placed in a laboratory for clinical and experimental neuroscience at the Indian Institute of Chemical Biology. Now I'm a student of biology, so this kind of tripped me. You know, Dr. Oyadeyi was awarded a doctoral fellowship by the Italian government. This fellowship was utilized at the University of Usobria for his PhD in cell and molecular biology. During his doctoral program, Ayodeji Oyadeyi studied the molecular physiology of peptide, and that goes deep into some things. And let me just leave that part for us. Dr. Oyadeyi received the Society for Neurochemistry Indian Fellowship in 2008. And, currently in Lautech, he's traveled to Austria. His primary research is in neuroscience, where he studies human and animal behaviors in health and diseases. Aside academia, Dr. Oyadeyi is passionate about human capacity development, and he regularly mentors students in entrepreneurship. He's an advisor to student Google ambassadors. When not in class or laboratory, Dr. Oyadeyi is writing or learning a new skill, even outside physiology. And physiology is such a powerful place. So with our hands, let's use the virtual clap or welcome him. Let's welcome Dr. Oyadeyi as he takes the stand. Welcome, Doctor.
Hello,
you can unmute you. Okay, you're muted.
Yes, I'm unmuted.
Oh, fantastic.
I hope this is clear enough for me.
Yes, we can see you, sir. Let me spotlight. Okay. You can go ahead, sir.
Okay, this is fine for everybody. Yeah, good evening, everybody. I should start by thanking the organizers, Mr. and Mrs. Giwa. Like she said, we've been together for quite some time now. It's a long journey. It's a journey that is still in progression. I thank you, Mrs. Giwa, for inviting me for this. Thank you, Mr. Giwa, the convener also. And a little bit of some background. This just started off a couple of weeks back. I responded to a Facebook post by Mr. Giwa, and then the idea came up and we felt, okay, this is something that is discussion worthy. So we put up this. And I thank him for what he is doing. Although I'm more of a quiet, silent follower of all his activities on Facebook, I know he organizes a lot of these social media campaigns in order to try to restore values to our society. The most recent one, I think, is the VIP campaign that is doing. I appreciate that. So thank you, everybody, for joining. I hope to be quite short, as much as possible. And I hope we are going to have a nice time. Like Mrs. Giwa introduced, the core of what we want to look at this meeting is to look at the recent trend in lewdness, vulgarity, in violence, in our in arts generally, because it is not only in music, as far as the audio version is concerned, it's also in the video. And even when you succeed in cutting out or in shutting out the audio and the video, you have a gateway in the internet itself where you have unlimited and unbridled access to music and all of this. And my job or my role as a scientist is to look at the data and to show us as individuals, as children or as parents, what the data shows are the effect of all this and what we should and what we could do as parents in order to safeguard ourselves. I have divided my discussion into three parts. One, I want to give us a situational analysis. And again, because I'm a scientist, much of what I'll be saying will be relying heavily on data. I believe in evidence-based intervention and evidence-based information. What data is showing to be true. So I'll be looking at situational analysis. After the situational analysis, we'll look at the effects of this lewdness and vulgarity in our music, effects on people, effects on children, effects on their development, effects on society at large. And then finally, I will try and give some suggestions based again on what science has shown works in this regard. Okay. Now, in terms of the situation, the interest in music or the development or the infiltration of music by lewdness, by violence, by sexism, by aggression, by drugs, actually began around 1940, according to data. However, because it began quite insidiously, it really did not catch much attention until around the 1980s, 1985, when some people now started to see it as a big problem. In fact, it was Mrs. Al Gore. Mrs. Al Gore was married to the former vice president of the United States, who came together to form a coalition that they called Parent Music Resource Center. They became worried by the trend of sexism, of explicit content in music in the United States back then. And then they started this coalition to try and protect their own family and then to try and prevail on the government of the day to bring in legislation to try to control this. So this has always been with us one way or the other. However, in recent history for the Nigerian context, I think this started with the advent of youth, with the foray of youth into music. When we started having the likes of Davido, Olamide, and all these people. Before then, the generation of musicians that we had were largely elderly people who generally sang for the pleasure, for the entertainment value of music, etc. But as soon as we had this crop of, and I must say, highly talented young people, as soon as they came into music, they, by some reasons, they switched into this kind of explicit content. I know immediately they tested the waters and they felt like, wow, people are consuming it. I know according to the law of economics, when there is demand or there is supply because there is demand. So because they tested the water and they felt that people were demanding it, they started, increasing the level, the quality, the quantity of all of these things that we are talking about in their music. In recent data in United States, what I'm quoting now is from the United States. According to this data, about 70 to 90% of musical content, 70 to 90% of musical content is actually sex related. That is a lot of sex actually flooding our homes, flooding our psyche, flooding the minds of young people and all that. And again, over 70% of this musical content portray men as adventurous, as aggressive, as very dominant over the female gender. Whereas over 70% of this musical content portray women as either sex subjects, as pleasers, as properties, as the weaker sex, or as faceless, or as people who are lacking in identity. According to a study by the American Psychological Association, in most of the musical videos that are in circulation, women are generally portrayed as decorative sexual objects, and you will see them either scantily dressed or not dressed at all. This does not happen for the male. You usually find men properly dressed in most of these musical videos. Perhaps what actually shocked me in recent times is a very recent study done in Nigeria, about 132 Nigerian music videos. This was a study that was done by some university professors from the eastern part of Nigeria, I think University of Nigeria, Suka. They gathered 132 Nigerian music videos and then subjected them to content analysis. I'll tell you the data. It's actually mind-boggling. 92.4% of these videos featured name calling and shaming of women. Okay, 92.4%, practically all the videos. Over 95% of these videos label body parts. I know some of us would have heard about objectifying or personifying women's body parts, either as vehicles. You can hear Ferrari, you can describe different parts of the female anatomy using symbolisms of the automobile industry and some of these areas. So over 95% of them do that. 73.5% describe women in relation to other physical objects, not only just vehicles. And 89.4% show women either nude or semi-nude. 69.7% of all these musical videos show sexually suggestive dance, gestures, and positions. Mr. Giwa just said moments ago, we just talked about this shady balabala or something. Interestingly, the first time I heard about it was from a former student of mine. Well, I didn't bother to go and check it until I saw some of the videos circulating on social media space and all that. Now, this is a problem because according to recent survey, our teenagers spend an average of 40 hours a week listening to music. About 40 hours a week listening to music. That is a lot. If you look at the average length of time that students spend in school every day, and you look at the average number of time of 40 hours per week, they are very close actually. Okay. In Sweden, this is where it becomes a bit frightening also. There was a study that was done in Sweden that showed that when children or adolescents began to take interest in music, one, they generally are likely to be more influenced by their peers. Two, they are less likely to be influenced by their parents. It means that the more interest that children, adolescents, teenagers have in music, the audio, the video, especially these ones with the explicit content that we are talking about, two things are likely to happen. One, they will be more susceptible to influence from their peers. And at the same time, they will be less responsive to parental control. Okay? That is a serious issue. Now, if you look after this situational analysis, what are some of the effects of lurid, lewd, explicit content in music, in videos, on individuals, on children, even on adults and the society at large? There was a study done in students that were about 18 years who were exposed to sexually explicit content. And they found out that the more exposure that children or that teenagers or adolescents or young adults have to music, videos with sexually explicit content, the more likely they will be using words, expressions, slangs, languages borrowed from this content. Because see, the way it works is it's a form of socialization. It's a form of acculturation. So once they begin to listen to more and more of this, more and more of that content will begin to find their ways into their expressions, okay? And aside that, the more they do this, the more they are highly tolerant of sexual behavior. And I'm almost certain that if this study was done in Nigeria, similar trend will have been reported. Aside that, when female children are exposed to sexually explicit content, like in the example that Mr. Giwa gave, one thing that happens to the mind of children is they begin to have an identity crisis. They begin to identify with the way females are portrayed. For example, if in a particular music, women are portrayed as sexual objects, it is very likely that a child will grow up, a female child will now grow up to identify ourselves as a sexual object. And in fact, they usually will go further by trying to actually prove it that they are sexual objects. And then you now come across expressions like, I'm sexy, or you look sexy. These are some of the influences that come out of this. And further studies have shown also that they actually begin to covet it and act it out. So when a child grows up watching and listening to sexually explicit content, there's a very high chance or probability that the child will grow up to act out the roles. It's a form of role playing. The child will act out the roles or act out some of the behavioral patterns seen in such videos or heard from such audio. There is something in human psychology that is called the horrid child syndrome. Now, in its simplest expression, horrid child syndrome means a child that was horrid through the phases of development. Okay, this happens on different fronts, on several fronts. It can happen on the educational front. It can happen on the psychosocial front. For example, a child that is not yet ready for GSS1, you push the child through from primary 3, the child skips or jumps 2 or 3 classes to go to GSS1. That child may experience what is called a horrid child syndrome. In the context of psychosocial development, a child that is not yet ready for adult content, for adult life, for adult things, these musical videos and audios literally hurry them and push them away from the innocence of childhood and suddenly makes them adults, because you now begin to expose the child's brain to adult content. And because the human brain is highly plastic, plastic means it is malleable, it can change, it can adjust. There are cells in the brain, there are connections, there are chemicals in the brain that can adjust based on the environment. Because the human brain is a highly plastic organ, you can literally hurry the child, and the child can develop what is called the horrid child syndrome with several negative consequences. In addition to that, exposure to sexually explicit content via audio or video has been shown to be associated with highly permissive attitudes towards premarital sex. And then a very strong endorsement of sex generally. So when you find teenagers, adolescents, or young adults who are very tolerant or who have a permissive attitude to premarital sex, this is one of the dangers, one of the effects of this consistent or persistent exposure to sexually explicit content. And it is not only sex, actually, it is also violence. In fact, in recent times, you will find gangster culture in our music. You will find even some elements of occultism. You will find elements of drug. And this glorification of violence, of drug, also leave their signatures on the brain. And its studies have shown that males, for example, male children who are exposed to music or content that glorify violence, they tend to grow to develop as aggressive males. And in fact, studies have shown that for them, they generally see women as objects, and they are very tolerant of sexual, not sexual violence, of what we call intimate partner violence. Maybe when they have girlfriends, they are very comfortable slapping the girlfriend. Or when they become married, they are comfortable beating their wives and all that. These are things that studies in psychology and science have shown to be the effect on the male brain also. A particular study that was done recently among African Americans actually showed that between the ages of 15 and 17, for example, children who have been exposed to sexually explicit content, about 65% of them usually have had sex already. The meaning of this in plain language is there is a correlation between sexual activity or early sexual activity and the content of music, the content of musical videos that children or teenagers have been exposed to. Now, it is not only males that can become violent. Studies have also shown that even females, when they are exposed to content that promote violence, and I've heard some of these contents myself. You will hear Nigerian musician glorifying violence, talking about guns, talking about shooting someone, talking about killing someone and all that. Studies have also shown that exposure of females to this kind of content can also make them develop into aggressive individuals. And a study by the American Pediatrics Association recently actually showed that it is not just the content, the genre, the type of music also can be indicative of what is happening in the brain of the child. For example, if a child loves or begins to show a preference for heavy metal music, the American Pediatrics Association have found that it is very likely that this is a pointer to either social alienation, to substance abuse, to psychiatric disorder, to suicide risk, and risk behavior during adolescence. The meaning of this data is when you see a child, a young person that has a preference for heavy metal or what we will describe as rock and roll music generally, you should begin to suspect that any of this is probably either present or developing already or will develop in future. That is social alienation, substance abuse, possible psychiatric disorders, suicide risk, and risk-taking behaviors when they grow up. So the effect of exposure to lurid content, to explicit content, either sex, either violence, either aggression, occultic language, or drug use, or the glorification. Now, this is a recent trend also in Nigerian music. You will discover that there seems to be a trend towards glorifying materialism, material wealth. Everybody wants to be rich, and you need to be driving some brands of cars, and for you to show that you have actually arrived or you have made it in life. All of these things, their effects on the brain are many, and eventually could lead to compromised development of the child, even the adult. My thinking generally is that the Nigerian society right now is around the same place where the American society was around the 1980s. And it was one of the worst moments in the American society because they had a lot of negative consequences shown in gun violence, the rate of dropout from schools, and so many other vices within the society. Briefly, having seen some of these effects, what are some of the possible things that could be done as individuals, as you who is having influence over your children, your family, your friends, or whoever, or wherever, or whatever your sphere of influence is? Number one, shockingly, what we will all generally think is censorship. But surprisingly, studies have shown that censorship does not work. And in most cases anyway, the governments are generally so irresponsible and non-responsive that they will not even censor appropriately. For example, Nigeria actually has a video, a music, or whatever censorship board. And sometimes when you see some music label, you will see things like NTBB. NTBB means not to be broadcast. But from experience and from data, when you begin to censor, censorship in the sense of controlling, restricting access to some of these content, once you begin to raise the bar of denial, the desire increases concomitantly, meaning that when there is denial, you inadvertently also raise desire. This is why generally in psychology, the data does not support absolute censorship. So censorship does not work. It does not work also because music is a part of development. You really cannot separate human development or music from human development. In fact, studies have shown that music is an essential part of the development of children and even of adults. We need music, they need music to develop. It is part of the way they acquire language, part of the way, the part of the brain that is responsible for language also develops, and so on and so forth. For adults, music has been shown to be therapeutic, for example. Music has been shown to help in depression, and music has been even shown to lessen pain, the perception of pain, either what we will call biological pain, the one that actually results from tissue damage, that is actually a problem in the body and you feel the pain, or what we call psychogenic pain, the pain that actually occurs in the mind in the absence of any kind of tissue damage. So music is important. Therefore, it really cannot be totally or fully censored. So if we cannot fully censor music, especially at the level of the government, what should we do as individuals, or what can be done as a government? One of the recommendations by the American Pediatric Association is that every parent should take an active role in monitoring the music that their children are exposed to. And I know this is a big area of failure in our society. Interestingly, the particular music that the track that Mr. Giwa was talking about the other time, I saw a viral video on social media where I saw school children, probably on the assembly or somewhere, led by somebody that I think is most likely the teacher, actually singing this song in the company of the students who actually chorus the song. This is one of the problems of the society. Obviously, that man is a parent. And in doing that in front of the children, is actually not setting a very good example. Parents should take interest in what the children listen to, what they consume, especially in this day of personal phones, personal computers, personal devices, and all that. You need to take active interest in what they listen to and what they watch. So parents should also be media savvy or be educated when it comes to media sources or different avenues where media is streamed either to the children or it can even be through the television in the house. Because if you don't know what is coming to them or what your children are coming across, you may not be able to know how to shield them or how to protect them. So general awareness is number one by the parents and by those who are in authority. You need to be aware of what is happening. Because if you don't know, if you are not aware of what is happening, I'm sorry, I just had a power outage.
No, don't worry. Go ahead. We are in Nigeria.
Okay,
We understand.
all right.
Let's go ahead, sir.
If you're not aware of what is happening, you will not be able to tell exactly what the problem is, or what the likely solution is. So every parent needs to be aware. For example, there are things that are coming up every day. It does not mean that you are also singing or you're joining them, but you need to have that information that, okay, this is what is happening, or these are the kind of content that are available or that are coming up in the society. Now, aside that, when you become aware of that, you need to become educated. What they recommend is become media literate. You need to know the different sources of media and all this. Now, two, it is recommended that if you are a parent or you are a person in authority, that you should actually be part of what your children are seeing, what they are watching. If they are watching or listening to music, listen to the same music with them. Now, the goal here is not to absolutely censor or stop them from listening. The goal is to let them be exposed to what they are listening to, so that you can point to them the different bad areas that, okay, this music, the lyrics of this music is saying this. This is not correct. You should do this. The truth is, we cannot raise our children in a bubble, and it is even counterproductive. You cannot raise them in a bubble. So what you should do is to get them to know what is available and then educate them appropriately on what is right and what is wrong in the content. It is much like immunization. For you to actually immunize your children, you need to let them be exposed a little, because whatever is denied is desired. They need to know what is available a little, but then you need to give them superior information about what is possible or about what is right and what is not right. Thirdly, you need to try and reduce access. Okay, it is not everything that they will have to watch. They cannot listen to every program. They cannot listen to every event. You cannot stop them from watching every program. You cannot stop them from watching every sorry, please. You can't stop them from watching some of these things. So what you should do is to reduce or control access to some of these. Sorry, please, I'm sweating. You can control the access so that they don't watch everything. Okay. In addition to that, I think one thing that we can do as people in positions of authority is what Mr. Giwa is doing. Like what they had to do in America in those years. Parents or people in authority can come together to form a coalition to try and make government pass some legislation. In fact, in the United States, in those years, they actually compelled the government to begin to put labels on musical videos and audio material, so that those ones that contain sexually explicit content will be written on it. We don't have something like, just like they write on cigarette packages that taking tobacco is dangerous to your health. We can also compel them to do the same if we come together as people in authority, increase the social media awareness of the dangers of all this. So finally, the ultimate responsibility will lie with individual parents at our individual homes. And if you are not a parent and you are aware of this, you also need to try and give yourself some kind of self-censorship, so that you don't listen to or you don't expose yourself to this kind of content. I think I have taken a lot of time already, so I'll stop here and allow questions, and if there are questions. So thank you everybody for listening.
No, we are. Thank you so much, Doctor. No, you've not taken so much time. We are still to time. I was looking at the time.
Good.
Thank you so much, sir. Fantastic. And, as you were talking, because, I'm a student of psychology, I've done quite a lot and my work with parenting, I was just like, man, it falls back on the parents, A lot of things we're saying, the brain malleability. And it's so powerful because the responsibility falls basically on individuals, and the parents are very key, to curbing this menace in the society. So please, anybody that asks, if you have a question, please raise your hand if you would like to verbalize articulate your question yourself. If not, please use the chat room and put in your questions. So while I'm waiting for people's responses, we already have 2 questions, but I think you have kind of touched on it. You says, how can we change the narrative? And you've basically answered that by some of the things that you have said. You've already said that, the solution lies with parents. And it's so important because I really want to bring that, because I work a lot with parents, and especially believers, people that are called religious, or people that have it, they believe in the supreme being, either they're Muslims or they're Christians, and all that. There is that level of leniency when it comes to what your child is listening to. And I like the fact that you really, made mention of that, because like you said, we cannot live in bubble, but we can also guide them. So one of the things, like you said, on Netflix, there are movies that you see there. This is for a kind of joy. This is violence. This is this. We don't have that here in Nigeria. But another thing that I've come to find out is that because of the agenda of this category of people, there are even some things they label for children. If parents are not watching and they are not sensitive, they pass across very subtle messages in some of those content. So what would you advise for, the child is probably with a nanny up, and they have to, what would you advise those kind of parents to do, especially, for people like here in Lagos? I don't know how it is in Ibadan. What would you advise working parents to really do to be able to restrict access, and be there? Because for somebody like me, or, for myself and my husband, we've guided the children, this program, look at the rating. If it's not PG, you can't watch it. Sorry, if it's not written in PG, you can't watch it. There are times my daughter wants to really watch something. And she says, Mommy, can I watch it? It's 13, but she's not up to 13. She wasn't up to 13. I says, can I watch it? I says, what does this say? You can't watch it. And if she really wants to watch it, I have to have checked that what is this program about in that sense. What would you advise parents that are not readily available to guide their children? Because, it's like the enemy that comes inside your parlor. You do not know. What would you advise, sir?
Well, thank you. My thinking will be that for parents who are in such a situation, I think the very first thing to do is what you already mentioned. The way we come to understand the negative is not by studying the negative, it's by studying the positive. Therefore, the way to actually discourage negative behavior is actually to first build up and encourage the positive behavior. So I will say that start by exposing them to what is already positive. When you do that, you will not need to spend a long time or much time discouraging or telling them what is negative. So first, start pushing positivity. Start showing them what is right, what is good for them, what is good for their brain, what is good for their development, encourage initiative, encourage creativity, get them busy, make them disciplined, let them develop all of these positive attributes. Then we'll not need to spend much time trying to discourage the negative part. Now, in terms of the practical outworkings, if you have to leave your leave home, then you leave your children alone and all that stuff, I will advise that you just do what is called substitution or replacement. Children will need to watch content one way or the other. They will need to listen to music. The goal is not to totally prevent them from listening to any kind of music. There are secular music that still have safe context, that the themes are not sexism or eroticism. The themes may be something like courage, like success. And they are not even necessarily gospel music. Right off my head now, I can mention 1, 2 artists whose themes are generally not along sexism and all that. So I will advise that you can do that. You can substitute or replace the content with safer content that they can listen to safely and control. If you have a nanny, for example, or a minder, or anybody who takes care of your children in your absence, you will have to give them strict instruction that in this place, I do not want this kind of music. I do not want this kind of music. This is the kind of music that I want. This is the kind of music that I want. I think those are some of the practical steps that you can take. The outworkings will depend on individual circumstances. Hello? Hello?
Sorry, I can hear you. Sorry, I wanted to mute. All right, fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Sam. I completely agree. Okay, somebody is asking a question here. How can pornography, sorry, let me read that. It says, how can pornography be curbed among teenagers, even adults? What are the effects on the nation? I think that's yes. How can pornography be curbed among teenagers? You know, even though I do have a response. What would you say, doctor?
Yes, pornography, sexually explicit content, and all of those, they are all, you can look at them as habits, actually. They develop over time, just like every other negative habit or vice develops. There are a couple of things, there are a couple of studies that have looked at the effect of sexual content on the brain and the effect, actually. The primary effect of such is that it literally weakens the moral backbone of the society. When you have a society that has everything but lacks morality, the society will still head for destruction one way or the other. So what I will advise for people like that is that there are therapists actually available that can actually attend to people like that, because believe me, in many instances, depending on how deeply the person has gone into it, the person might need actually sessions of therapy, might need to discuss with people who are professionals who can guide the person through to get out of it. But it's certainly a dangerous practice. At the level of habits, depending on how serious it is, parents or an adult can actually try to help himself. There are self-help books all over the internet that the person can look to. At the end of this program, I can make specific recommendations. In fact, there are courses that can be taken to help people in that regard. I can make specific recommendations after this.
Okay, Funke, I hope you don't mind, but I think there are two people who have raised their hands in the chat room. There is Ishmael Adeni.
For that, okay, so yeah. All right, so please, can you help me unmute them? I think my phone has overdone its work today. So help me unmute Ishmael so that Ishmael can ask his question. Ms. Adegiwa, can you please help me unmute Ishmael?
I'm having some challenges with
I
doing
think
that.
he should unmute.
Hello.
Okay, I think he's unmuted now.
I'm unmuted now.
Okay.
All right. Good evening, everyone. And thank you, Doctor, for the wonderful lecture on this. Okay. First, the one said Ismail. I'm Ismail, not Ismail, please.
Okay, it's fine.
That being said, yeah.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. That being said, I would like to give a personal experience over this issue first. First, like while growing up, my dad actually, doctor said the advent of people like V.S.A.V.E was what brought in this kind of stuff. Actually, it was earlier than that. We have people like V.S.A.V.E, Pasuma in Fiji industries back in those days. So my dad actually banned such music in our home. So the kind of music that we basically listened to then was quite barista. That's Sikira and barista then, and the man is quite good and he talks about a lot of things that actually help. And up till now, I prefer listening to that than all these other form of music. So that being said, my question is actually, his presentation was actually in line that it's kind of malign men as men being the only actual driver of this stuff. But if we look at the current secular music industries, you find, like in Nigeria now, you find people like Tiwa Savage in there. They are women. And they also contributed to this stuff, even their music videos. And in places like this, you have people like Nicki Minaj and what was it called? The latest one now, I forgot. And some other. So, and the content that they produce, and the mentality of the industry is that sex sells. Yeah. So you have an industry where sex is the drive for the content that is being produced. Any parent will just be the one to be mindful of all this content, which really won't work in the sense that we have internet. Back in the children can stream, go to YouTube, stream some stuff and listen to all this kind of stuff. And we have abundance of them littered on the internet. So parent aspects can't really that work if the government is going try to sanitize the industry and let the people in the industry knows the consequences of what they produce and how it can affect people. If you look at a series of musicians, they actually drug addicts. Most of them that produce this kind of thing. They become addicted to drugs and a lot of things. Some of them even ODs on drugs, they overdose on drugs. So my question is now that what is the role of women in curbing these stuffs? Because if you look at their music videos, the people you will find in there are mostly women that are scantily dressed. So if you are being offered a role as a woman, a mother, you have a mother, someone that is going to be a potential mother should be the one that should even be more concerned about this. To me, those women are homemakers, as we all know. So what is the role of women, especially those in that industry, in preventing this kind of sexism and the kind of content that portray women as objectified women? So that's actually my question. What should the women do? Not just about we should stop these things in our home. There is no way to find its way in homes. There is no way. So thank you.
All right, over to you, Doctor. Even I want to make my comment on that, but over to you, Doctor.
Okay, I will have to speak without the mic. I hope this is fine also.
Yeah, it's okay, sir.
Okay, my AirPods went off. Now, well, as per the role of women and government from your question, certainly the government has a big role to play. However, from experience from other societies, for example, in the United States, censorship does not work. Believe me, the world has gone through trials of censorship. The reason censorship does not work in most society is this, and it is simple. Music comes under what is called protected speech. Protected speech means everyday speech that you and I will use. It is protected. When you are in a government, when you are in a country that practices democracy, music also comes under protected speech. The line between censoring the content of music and exceeding what we will describe as the boundary or going beyond the boundary of morality, that line is very thin. And all over the world, several countries have implemented it, but they have failed because the industry has stood strongly against it and has hidden under it is protected speech. Okay. How do you in Nigeria also? I think the government also needs to do more. I am absolutely convinced that the government is not doing enough at all. And the reason the government is not doing enough also is because we don't have enough pressure groups. We don't have groups that can pressure the government to come up with the necessary legislation to at least introduce some sanity into this. One of the other reasons why censorship does not work also is you need to recall that this is business for some people. Art is business. Government is making money. The artists are making money. Most people will not want to tamper with whatever gives money to the government and whatever brings money to the pocket of the artist. So it becomes a very dicey situation for government to even try to. It's the same problem with tobacco, for example. Regulating tobacco, regulating alcohol is a dicey situation for government because you want income to come in from this product. At the same time, you don't want the negative effects of some of these products. So it's really a bit tricky. For the role of the women, I strongly believe that women generally have a role to play. Now, one of my thinking is that feminism as a philosophy or as a practice or as a belief system needs to expand its frontiers to actually cover some of these areas. If you listen to some of the data that I talked about, shockingly, you mentioned V.S.A.V.E, you mentioned some. V.S.A.V.E music was one of the music that was analyzed in the data that I told you about in Nigeria, all filled with sexually explicit content. I think maybe there needs to be a campaign spearheaded by women, directed at women, because they are the direct, in most cases, recipients of some of these things. They are the ones that are scantily dressed, while the men are properly dressed. They are the ones that are objectified, while men are not objectified. So I generally feel that, yes, women will need to do more to increase their awareness, start enlightenment campaigns, and educate themselves generally so that they can actually speak up as the people who are directly affected by some of these things. I believe that is one of the things that they need to do.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir, for that. And I wanted to add something to that. So in the meantime, when we're waiting for the government, to do whatever, the personal responsibility actually on the parents themselves, like Doctor said before. We cannot wait for the government because these are your children, and children basically have like 18 years thereabouts to stay with you. In fact, less, because if they go to boarding, you find out that the control you have over them is, so parents need to be aware of that. You just have to take personal responsibility. Yes, we talked about the fact that these women are also, they have already been socialized, just like Doctor said, they are also a product of the system. And it's how things work. What you see, they have been indoctrinated as well. you know, and it is from that they are also putting out things, you know, in that sense. If you find out, you know, so someone said in the chat, I think it is Mr. Lala, and he was talking about, you know, how he interacts with his children, you know. So you have families that, just like your father, you know, kind of, you know, banned certain music in the house and told you that you guys should listen to this. You know, if you start early, you know, because children in the formative years, so there are different stages for children. They are classified in this age group, and I'm not going to go into a parenting class. But the younger they are, the better you can groom them in the pathway that they need to go with. And so if you have started that work early, you can't leave it into government because they're not doing anything. Just like it says, tobacco, when I was in school, you know, when I was young, people have said if they wanted to ban tobacco, they would have banned it now. But they just put there, smokers are liable to die young. So make a decision if you want to take the tobacco or not. You know, the government won't do that. So it's left to the parents. It's left to individual homes. It's more tedious. It's more taxing. But that's what we have, you know. And everybody has been exposed, you know, to different. When we were growing up, democracy, but there was still hard. Moment. That's how it is today. So even if you ban things, there is the internet. So you mentioned that, okay, there is the internet, but there are blockers, there are what do they call it? There are apps that can minimize what your children are exposed to on the internet. So there are security softwares that can be installed on your system at home that can limit access to certain things. You know, there are apps like that, you know, what do they call them? I'm trying to remember the name. So
parental control.
Yes, parental control that you can, you know, install on your apps, you know, that on your browser, you know, on your devices that can limit access to the children. The responsibility still falls on us because if you want to stop it, we have to take responsibility. There is just no two way about it because the governments, like we know, will not do anything. And even in the developed countries, you can see what is happening. You know, it's everywhere. It's published. So I think Doctor has just hit that clearly. All right.
Okay.
So I think,
Okay.
yes, please.
Sorry, Adebayo Gabriel had raised his hands before, and there's a Itope Lala also, and I'd like us to have them make comments very shortly. Adebayo Gabriel and Itope Lala, please, can we unmute them and let them give comments Gabriel, very shortly? Yes.
All right, Adebayo Gabriel, you are up.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Mr. Gabriel.
Yes, Adebayo Gabriel said already. I would like to appreciate my lecturer, which is also the president presenting today. I thank you very much. I've already asked my question about pornography and the effects on the nation. And Doctor has already told us that we like to reference it after concluding the memo. Thank you very much. That's what I have to say.
Thank you,
All right.
Mr. Adebayo.
Over to you, Doctor.
Yes.
Mr. Itope Lala. Can we have Mr. Itope Lala?
All right, I was trying to unmute myself. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, sir.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Dr. Oyadeyi. Good to see you again after a long time. All right, so I just wanted to kind of corroborate some of the things you said, you know, and probably also suggest that parents should get more involved with, you know, their children and any set of children they see around them. I remember having to talk to my sister-in-law and my wife having to talk to her too about her children and some of the programming that they had some older people in the house. They had somebody that was maybe at 30, 25 thereabouts, and these people were watching programs like Big Brother, you know, and certain Nollywood movies when the children were there. Now we have to get involved and say, these children, I mean, these are children that were below 10 at that time. You don't expose them to things like this, even though the adults are watching. I mean, look for ways to create opportunities for them. So I want to encourage parents to, and people that find, children around them, to encourage and participate with children. What I do with my own kids is to, when we are driving or when we're in the house, they play music and I listen. I ask them questions about the music. Oh, what is the lyrics of this? Why are you listening to this song? What does this mean? And that kind of helps them to be more intentional about what they are listening to. Another thing I do is anytime I go to the barbers, this happens a lot. The guy's always playing Pasuma and all this other. I actually take my own songs with me and I tell them that, bros, please, can you help us play this one? I don't go there with worship music, so that I look for Fuji that is, clean, gospel related stuff, and I take it to them. And I ask the guy to play. And the guy knows that when I'm around, they can't play. Sometimes I educate and I tell them that, the reason why I don't want them to listen to this is because of some of the things they say there. So I think that way we can begin to extend our influence little by little into places, so that we can change the paradigm of people and re-socialize them so that we have a better society. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, before
okay, I have.
Let me.
Sorry, I don't know if you're still the person. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, good evening. This is Bumi Ogunleye. Thank you, Dr. Oyadeyi. So I just want to, I don't know if you can hear me, please.
Yes, clearly.
Okay, so I just want to add to what the last speaker said. Okay, so I just want to add to what the last speaker said and possibly give one or two examples. So I think it's time women particularly, just like what the first person said, needs to be involved in the upbringing of their kids. Women should create a balance between career and the family. So I do have an example. One of the banks in Nigeria, there's a senior manager. So there was a time she called in. She's a person I know very well. There was a time we spoke about a particular issue, and what actually happened was that she went to work. That fateful day, she had to come back early from work. I think she needed to pick something. On getting home, she didn't meet her maid in the house, and she had to call the maid. After several calls, the neighbors around helped get the maid, and the maid came back from wherever she was. And on coming back, she forgot the key, where she went to. So after asking her, where did you drop the key? And to cut the long story short, this lady went to an hotel. On getting to the hotel, the woman started asking questions, and the hotel management said, she's a regular customer here. She comes here around 10, 11 o'clock. So after this woman go to her place of work, the maid always take men to the hotel. And the kids, they are always with this maid. So what do you expect that kind of maid to pass across to these children? Knowing fully well that the woman is not always around. So I think it is time for women to take ownership, take responsibility of bringing up their child and not relying on the government and our policies. I have another example of a woman too, who she's a top person too. If I even mention her name, is someone every other person knows. So she was conducting an interview for a friend of mine, and if the friend of mine asked her, "Ma, how do you manage your family and your career?" And the woman started crying. And the woman said, "Look, the challenge she has presently is that her two kids, they are drug addicts. They've been sent out of schools, both in Nigeria and outside Nigeria, because of this job, because she never had time, to take care of these kids." So I think it's time women start taking ownership of the sensitization should keep going on. Women should start taking ownership of the home, start be concerned about the upbringing of the kids. One of the speaker already said that when he was growing up, Sikiru and all of that. Me growing up, we didn't even watch television. We only watch NTA news at 9 o'clock. I know you come back to tell my father what you actually saw. So till today, I don't even watch TV because if I even watch for 10 minutes, I sleep off. So, and that has been part of me. So, but we can't train our kids that way. We can't tell them this is what you should watch, this is what you should not watch. We can't send them away and all of that. But at least there are ways we can manage this thing so that at least when we now release them to the society, they will not acquire more from the society. Even when they are acquiring, they will be, a kind of comparison with what they were told at home, the way they were brought up, and they will be able to balance the two. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much,
That's a
sir.
very valid point.
Very valid. I saw Samson Latif raise his hand. Do you still have a question, sir? Let me ask you to unmute. So, doctor, we have a question that has to do with pornography. Okay, Samson, go ahead, please. You still have a question.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me all?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, good evening, sir. Good evening, Dr. Oyadeyi, and good evening, everyone. My name is Latif Samson from Ogumosho. Now, my question is in respect to the team. Now, violence, sex, and vulgarity in entertainment. Maybe I am in a cohort of entertainers, and if I don't do, if my content or my materials are not in respect to all this, it wouldn't sell. So what advice do you have for me as a person in a court of entertainers that, okay, every other person have to involve vulgarity, sex, and violence in his or her music or content of stuff to make it out there? Because without it, they wouldn't sell. So over to you, sir. Can I mute now?
Yes, you can.
Yes, you can, sir.
Okay.
Oh, well, I guess that would be a personal choice, kind of. Well, first and foremost, if you recognize, and you really have to do that before you will be able to take a valid decision, you will need to come to a personal recognition that by your content, you are contributing to the problems in the world, and that you really cannot live healthy in an unhealthy world yourself. Even if you do, your children of your own children, your generations down the line, all of them cannot escape. So in that sense, if you realize that you are part of societal pollution as far as the morality is concerned, when you come to that realization, you will need to then decide if this is what you want to do further or this is where you want to stop. And there are examples, interestingly, in the world, actually. There are people who started their career from completely secular music, promoting some of these contents that we are talking about, and who suddenly came to the realization of the fact that, well, I no longer want to promote sexism. I no longer want to promote gangster culture. And then they changed the direction of their music or left the genre for another one. I was going to mention a woman's name, Immigrant. Immigrant started as a secular musician. Eventually, she's more of a Christian pop singer now, and she's doing very well. Okay, so there are people in the world who have done that. That is one way of looking at it. Secondly, you really don't. While it is true that sex sells, violence sells, and all that, it is also true that you can choose themes that are different from sex. For example, studies have shown that children, teenagers generally are drawn to themes like love. Love, not the romantic, erotic part of love, okay? They are drawn to themes like heroism. They are drawn to themes like courage, okay? So you can decide to go in some of those directions, if you will. And I can mention artists now that even people who are religious, both Muslims and Christians, listen to them because of the perceived cleanness of their lyrics. If you listen to people like Celine Dion and some of these people that promote just love, a good world, you know, people still go for some of these themes and all that. So I think those are probably the two options that you will have if you want to continue as a producer of content in music, and you don't want to go to the extreme of promoting unhealthy themes.
Fantastic. Somebody even mentioned here that Asha, you know, Asha is an example.
Asha is a very good example.
I also know of Simi.
Lagbaja is a good example.
You know, I don't know about some of these contents. I've been to Simi maybe once or twice. Simi, I don't, Simisha.
Okay.
So,
Could I also add some content? Pardon me. Yes, that's Simi. Once again, thank you very much, Doctor. I think that I have jotted enough content that I can use for, we can use for a moral values campaign. That is the purpose of this sort of enlightenment. Because what we have done tonight is to look at the science behind it, get the data right, and then prefer solutions. And if we are not preferring both solutions, then we are just come for a chat room. I think that change agents and people who are particularly passionate about change should be able to put their monies where their mouth is. Okay, when I look around our society and I see, if you walk around Lagos, for instance, you see that there is no consciousness of how we are trying to change the mindset of our people or educate our people creatively, okay? And so you see that our billboards, our bus stops are virtually flat, are taken over by major businesses. People who are change agents and people who want to make change happen should take that opportunity to invest on a campaign that will creatively meet and reach the people. We grew up in moral education classes, and there are certain people that said that there were certain frames that were on their walls at home, that when they read that, they lived in those homes for 5 years, and those contents on those frames on the walls shaped the way they began to think. So I think the challenge is to all of us here. The fact is that, yes, while we can handle this from the home front, and we need to do that so strongly, as Doctor has said, and push our children out as change agents, but you also know that there is a high level of, in this society where many people are not even in homes. Many children are not in secured spaces, so to say. And you meet your children, meet with them every day out there, okay? So there is a need for us to take on this challenge. We need to promote right content also. If Asha, as Doctor has said, if love songs can sell, and we've seen examples of people who sell them or who make a fortune from them or make a name out of them, then we should be able to sponsor our own kind of musicians, okay? I mean, Davido, Wheatcrib, all those boys, they have money in the thousands of dollars. You know, I reported a content of Naira Marley once on, I think it was was it on Twitter or one of them? But the feelers I got was that, I mean, these guys are very strong people. If the block is whatever, it doesn't really, you are talking about people who deal in huge currency, because there's also the economics of this. So, but if we can come together and put our mouths, our money's where our mouth is, and promote the right voices, I think we will be able to begin to make change happen as we intend to, because the society as it is right now, as Dr. has pointed out, is in a very, very terrible state, just like it was in America in the 1980s. You know what America has become now? Gun violence, people just enter because they play video games, enter schools and kill people. We do hope that that will not be our case. And we do hope that each and every one of us who have listened tonight will be able to go back and bring ideas or package these ideas together, and then we fund them and then we push them into the public space. That's what I wanted to say concerning that. So over to you, Funke.
Thank you so much, Mr. Giwa, and thank you so much, Doctor. Let me read some of the comments that we have. That I see quite a lot of people have dropped in 1 or 2 comments. Complained about the music videos being played in a barber's shop. And that was the last time we went there. So as rightly said, this training should start from a very young age, and parents should be acutely aware and be conscious of what they themselves engage in. Let's remember that these children are very smart. Fantastic. Okay, answer those questions. Okay, so this is where Mr. Ayodeji says that when me and my boys visited the barber's shop, I asked the barber to play my own music. Very great, you know, that shows a lot of parental awareness. Thank you so much, everybody that has dropped in their comments. Thank you for being a part of this session. So VIP is a campaign that is to bring an awareness into for us about the place of values in our society, and we are still developing our campaign, and we'll be sending you further information via email, and we'll keep in contact. Thank you so much, Doctor, for giving us insight into the science of this, because yes, and I'm sure there's a lot you could say more. I'm sure you just packed that in about 30 to 45 minutes. Thank you so much, sir. All right, so it's 10 o'clock in the absence of any. All right, thank you, Doctor. Any last words for the people, Doctor?
Oh, well, I think we have all.
Any last words, sir?
Yes, we have all made nice contributions. We just need to follow them up with actions at our own different levels and spheres of authority. And thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Giwa. I appreciate this. You are doing wonderfully well.
Thank you, sir. Any last words, Mr. Giwa?
Well, Doctor has set it up, Funke has said it, and I think the wonderful panel that joined in tonight has also said it. It's time to make actions and prefer bold solutions and take responsibility. Okay, you can't just sit down there any longer and say that, well, it's their own. You know, it has come down to this right now. Everybody must be on their feet and their toes, and we must all be doing something to resolve this. And I do pray for us all that your hands will be strong and you will have inspiration to be able to solve these problems, both at home and then in the general society as a whole. Thank you all very much. Very grateful for your time. God bless you.
Thank you, sir, for that short word. So we encourage you to join us. Watch out for our emails. You can reach out to us, via our email address, African Development Club. Join the campaign. Let us be proactive in raising a generation of morally and wholesome children. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a blessed night rest and see you some other time. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Doctor. Very grateful.